So in late 2016, after having owned a Prusa i3 Mark IIs for a while, I decided I wanted to set myself a challenge of designing and building my own version of an i3 and to loosely base it on the Prusa Mark IIs. But instead of using the open source Prusa parts design or any design from the likes of thingiverse.com, for example, that I would do it from scratch. And so I set myself that challenge, and then in early 2017, Thomas Sanladerer came out with an excellent series of videos about how to build a cheap clone of the Prusa i3. So that even motivated me even more. And I made a set of requirements that I wanted for my design. And these sort of requirements included an extensible design where I could add functionality as the design evolved, and that meant using T-slot profile for the frame. I also wanted to maximize the use of 3D printed parts on the basis that I wanted to be able to produce a new printer from the existing printer I have. And also I don't have access to a CNC machine, for example. So the best fabrication platform for me is indeed the existing FDM printer that I have. I also wanted to ultimately build an enclosed printer. And that's sort of contradictory to the i3 style, which isn't by itself an enclosed printer design. But of course people can and have done put covers over their i3. And I just wanted to make some improvements into the way the fan worked, the cooling fan, and also how the idler spring system worked on the Mark IIs. And so ultimately it took me over a year of designing, printing, experimenting and prototyping to eventually come up with a functional EvoLabs i3 printer, which I eventually just called a prototype because despite it being as functional as the Prusa i3 that I already had, it didn't seem to be a step up, primarily because the bed size was the same and the build dimensions of the printer were the same. But it was a great learning curve for me, and despite the fact that I no longer have the EvoLabs i3 prototype, the parts were cannibalized, some of them for my new printer, for the EvoLabs EV-1. It was a very valuable experience, and it taught me a lot about how to actually design and build parts for a 3D printer, and also getting into the practice of the deployment process of modifying mail and firmware and deploying it to the printer, tweaking the settings, and all the other things that go into designing and building a good 3D printer, that as an owner of even a kit that you've purchased, you simply don't learn. You don't have to learn it. Once I'd had my EvoLabs i3 prototype running for some time, and I made the decision that I wanted to move to a larger printer and to abandon the i3 style and go with a fully enclosed design. I decided I wanted the bed to be as large as possible and the build volume to be as large as possible. So I chose a 330 by 330 square print bed, and I would use the same controller board that I'd used with the i3 prototype, and that is the Rambo Mini, which is actually used on the Prusa i3 Mark IIs as well, and also use a simple LCD controller, a character-based LCD controller, which again the Mark IIs uses.